dot, 3 dots, a new syntax shared for spread and rest. What is the difference between these two? And what structures can you spread? Plus, will a symbol be part of rest properties? Hi and good morning. My name is Robin Pokorny and I like to write JavaScript, I like to read JavaScript, and I like to talk JavaScript. And in my videos, I try to give explanations with a little twist for more experienced developers. So if you are new, consider subscribing. Today, I woke up at 4 a.m. and that's actually a bad thing, but it turned out to be a good thing because I had time to really look into the specification for this. And I discovered several nice things and I completely changed the concept of this video. Spread operator and rest elements are very closely related, and when I do programming I don't distinguish between those two properly. But there are differences. One could say that there are two sides of the same coin and they kind of complement each other. Spread is the opposite of rest. So what is the difference? Let's go high level. Spread means that you have a container and you spread or expand it to its elements. I like to picture it as if you have a deck of cards and you spread it to individual cards. In JavaScript, the normal use case is that you have an array and you want to put this array, but not the array as an object, but elements of this array into a new array. REST, on the other hand, collects several elements and puts them into one container. The common use case is when you define a function, maybe you use the first argument and you take every other arguments, all of them, into one argument, to one array of those. But now there's a second dimension to that. It's 2018 and 2 months ago a new specification, ECMAScript 2018, has been published. And it introduces this new thing which I believe many of you were using even before that, and it's called object spread and object rest. So what it means that to this distinction of spread and rest, we have to kind of add columns, and I will call them array and object. That means there are these four possible combinations. Let's start with the upper left, array spread. So where can you use array spread? There are actually only two places where you can use that. The first one is array liter. That means when you create a new array using the square brackets notation. And you can use it multiple times in there even. The second place is function calling. When you call a function, you can pass arguments and spread them. For example, you don't know how many you have or where they come. We talked about this in the last video when I talked about function apply. This is an alternative. But what can you spread actually? You can spread anything which is iterable. There's also something newer in JavaScript. And iterable is anything that implements iterable protocol. Yeah. There are several built-in structures which are iterable. It's array, obviously. Then it's, for example, string, set, map, typed array. And for example, in DOM, you can have node list. But you can create your own structures which are iterable. So why do I call this array spread when there are so many things you can spread? Well, the result is always an array if we consider function arguments array, and that's pretty safe. That means you will always end up with an array. It also kind of implies that the iterator has to be finite, otherwise your application will crash. Let's move down. Array rest. There are again two places where you can use it, and they are very similar to the previous one. So the first place is destructuring, but it can be only array destructuring. I hope that you know destructurings in ECMAScript. For anything which is array destructuring, you can use rest, that means a variable with 3 dots before that, as the last argument. And it really has to be the last argument, and you cannot use a trailing comma after that. That would be considered as syntactic error. The other place is function definitions. And that's what the example I showed in the beginning. And again, the result now is array. It's always an array, either in the structuring or in definition. And that kind of follows why I call this array column. Let's move to the object. Object spread. So this is something that is really new and it can be confusing. However, as I said, I believe it's been used before, and in React community, I think it's even in the tutorials now. So what it does, it takes an object and it copies its iterable properties into a new object. So, okay, let's go through that. You can spread an object, but hey, in JavaScript, everything is an object, and that is certainly true. I believe any expression you try to spread is valid. Maybe it will cause like an empty object, or because it doesn't have any properties, like a number, but you can do that. This is mostly used for spreading objects and copying their properties. But hey, you can spread an array and then indexes will become keys. Or you can use it for set as well. That's interesting for me. On the other hand, some things will not get copied. For example, prototype or anything defined on prototype will not be part of the new object. Where can you use object spread? There is now one place only where you can use that, and that is object literal, meaning defining a new object using the curly brackets notation. And because you use it like that, the result is an object because you use an object literal. Duh. Let's talk about the last thing of those four, and that's object rest. Maybe go from the other side where you can use that. Again, there's only one place where you can use object rest, and that is during destructuring. And again, only object destructuring. And again, I believe it has to be the last part of the destructuring. What it will do is that it will take all the properties not listed before and put them into this one object. So again, the result is object, and the source, well, it can be anything again. Let's talk about something more interesting, symbols. How do symbol properties behave in object spread or object rest in that case, because it's the same? So I believe it's a little bit messy. Symbols are generally considered non-enumerable. And you can see that, for example, using the for-of notation, or when you write object keys, you will not get properties with symbols. But there's an exception. And yes, you guessed it. There are 3 exceptions, I believe, maybe more. But these 3 are object spread, object rest, and object assign. With these 3, you will receive the symbol properties as part of them. It can be very confusing and it can cause some problems, so you should know about that. Question for you: had you been using object spread or object rest before it was finalized? And if yes, what is your favorite tip? Please share it in the comments. I hope you found this useful, and if you have, hit the like button. I'm Robin and I like to write JavaScript. See you next time.